So, so last week we looked at these verses and we saw that they were separated into three parts. So from verses 9 to 31 were separated into three parts. We had what we did last week, verses 9 to 14, which is covenant past. So that related to all the history that led up to that moment in time, the crossing of the Jordan, and it's a kind of potted history. And we explain what covenant is. We'll come back to that in a moment. Now today we're looking at covenant present, which is what we just read, and we may get to covenant future at the end of this, or maybe next week. We'll see. God willing, who knows? We'll see how we go. So I want to give a quick recap of what covenant is. So the Lord, he picked the covenant partner. Israel did not go to God and say, we want to be in agreement with you. God went to Israel and said, I want you to be my people. And so the Lord establishes the terms. He defines the consequences, depending on how loyal they are or not. So that's blessings and curses. Then the Lord establishes the procedure by which it's ratified, and then which is the Ten Commandments, basically. And the Lord guarantees its fulfillment. And you notice it's not dependent upon the Israelites, the fulfillment of this covenant. It will be fulfilled however it goes. And also the Israelites, all they had to do at the beginning was to say yay or nay. And they accepted, because what they said is, all that the Lord has said, we shall do. And that was the Ten Commandments. So they accepted this offer from God, and now it's binding. Nothing can undo it. Clearly we've read these words in this chapter, and it's summed up in these words: you shall have no other gods beside me. It was to be an exclusive relationship. God will not tolerate rivals, and therefore to go to any other god, small g, is foolishness. So why is it foolishness? Well, because they're not real. They're fake. Got fake news, we've got fake gods. Okay, so Moses gets then a little bit more specific. And in verse 16 it says, nor male nor female, obviously human-like figures. Don't make the formless God have form. God is spirit. When it talks about God sees and God puts his hand upon nations, and we see all that, the language that we use about our bodies, well, God does not have a body. Okay, he is spirit, and he's formless. So he says, don't think about making me look like a man or a woman with your images. I'll get to the fact that we have Jesus another time. Okay, I can see what you're thinking. And they we're not to make anything in the form of any animal. And then he goes for a list. So no flying creatures like bats or birds. No four-legged animals like cows or pigs. Anything that crawls along the ground. Well, you can think about termites or snakes. Yeah. Anything that crawls along the ground. Then nothing from the sea, whether that be a fish, an octopus or whale or whatever, and the order that is put in, by the way, is exactly the way it's put out in the creation passage in Genesis 1. It's set out in the same order of creation. Archaeologists have discovered all kinds of divine images from the ancient world, illustrating all of these different types. And there we have a few. They got male god, which you can't really see because we have a problem with the lens on the projector. There's an L, and then there's Canaanite icon of Baal, which is, with a thing there and with his feet forward. It's all kind of strange stuff they have. You've got the Asherah, that is spoken a lot in Scripture about these particular ones. These are female fertility gods with exaggerated femininity. Okay, and then there's what else have we got here? We got the forms of bulls, or the Egyptian god Anubis, which is this one here. We've got the jackal's head, the falcon head, which is this one here, god of Horus. In Assyria, they have gods in the form of a fish. See the scales. And these kind of man-made creations. But then they're made gods out of the rest of creation as well, like sun, moon, and stars. And we can see illustrations of these here. But this one here in the corner is quite interesting, because this is a present-day one, and it's on top of a mosque. That's right, on top of a mosque. And in fact, you'll find the crescent moon on every mosque, regardless, except this one is unusual, and in fact it has a star on it as well. Though Islam is supposed to be monotheistic, if you read the beginning histories, you'll know that it started with 3 gods, okay, and the moon god won out, and then they created all this other myth about it becoming from Abraham, well, which I don't agree with at all. And of course it has its roots in astrological worship. So Moses says you should not worship the sun, moon and stars, or any of the host of heaven, and that's again the order that we find in Genesis 1, 14 to 18. And these heavenly creations, the sun, moon and stars, they were put into the sky for everyone's benefit. Okay, it was to ensure order of the universe, to serve us. Actually, they guarantee the seasons, they guarantee the rains, the dry periods, wet periods, they guarantee the well-being of life on earth. But idolatry completely inverts creation, is that we're worshipping it when it's supposed to be serving us. And so instead of human beings serving God by caring for the creatures, they elevate the creatures to the status of deity and become subservient to that which we are supposed to subdue and rule over. What was it that God said? Subdue and rule over and populate the earth. That was our role, and now we're worshipping all these things. But of course that reminds us, and I'm sorry about the small writing, I forgot to break this down a bit into bigger writing, but you can look it up in Romans 1, from verse 18 to 25. Let me just quickly read through it. I'm going to read from it, the New King James Version. It says this: for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man. Remember, this is what we read. Do not make things into the image of a man. And then the birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. Well, this is funny. This is sounding very familiar, Therefore, God also gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts, to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Amen. But you would think that in this modern world, we've moved on. We're modern people. In fact, we're called postmodern these days. We don't do things like this anymore. We don't worship creation, do we? Or creatures. Well, let me start with the two Christian ones, Roman Catholicism and Orthodoxy, who have icons and the veneration of Mary and the saints. Veneration just means worship. And of course, Mary is now co-redemptive in Roman Catholic theology, which means that she and Jesus saves us, which is complete nonsense, of course. And then, of course, you've still got the religions of Buddhism and Hinduism and various other isms throughout the world. And so what have we got there? We've got over half the world's population worshipping this. I mean, you only have to go to an Orthodox church in Macedonia, kissing all the icons and everything else. It's appalling. You know, I just think, what on earth are they thinking? But it's a worship of creation rather than the creator. And idolatry is foolishness because it's only God who can save. No one else has done anything for them. You know, they pray to these things, but what do they receive in return? They don't receive anything in return. And as a result, you're also inviting the wrath of God because he is a jealous God. That was that last verse that we read there. God is a jealous God. And, you know, a husband would be rightly jealous of his wife, or a man who wanted to sleep with her, and you know, rightly so. He would be livid, and hopefully he should do something about it. A real man would. But of course, there's justice and the law to think about here. But of course, it would make you angry, and idolatry. That's what, through idolatry, this is what Israel is doing to God, and what actually we are doing to God as people on the planet. And when Israel is seduced by a foreign god like Baal and commits spiritual harlotry, the Lord's passion is ignited. And if Israel goes after another god, seeks another lover, God will not put up with it. And the grace of the covenant present ends on this warning: the Lord your God is an impassioned God, a consuming fire. And you think, well, that should be enough to make you think twice. So let's go on to the next bit then, covenant future, verses 25 to 31. Where did we finish? Denise, I know I've got you into a moment there. Deuteronomy 4:25, and we'll finish at verse 31. So it's Deuteronomy 4:25, and then we'll carry on around.
But you have had children and grandchildren, and lived in the land a long time, and then become corrupt and again things they do, doing evil in the eyes of the Lord, the God, and provoking him to anger.
26, yeah.
26. They're called heavens.
So in verse 25 through verse 31, Moses turns towards the future, and he looks towards the distant future because so this is all about the grace of the covenant future, and grace is really the word here. We cannot understand these verses though without understanding the triangular nature of the covenant with God, because it is God at the top with his people Israel, but also the land is also included in that. You know, so the covenant is with the people and the land. So the Lord has established Israel as his covenant people, and with the land. And we find that when they cross over the Jordan, because Moses doesn't cross over with them, he said, well, when you cross over, you will make an agreement then finally with God, with the land, about the land as well. And an agreement will be made at Gerizim and Ebal in a ritual to establish that covenant. But what we've read here from Moses, it doesn't paint a good picture. It's not a rosy future, considering what we've already talked about, covenant past and the present, and the warnings. He's saying the warnings, you're not going to listen to them. You are going to completely ignore them. It's as if when we read this back, we're thinking, "Oh, this was written after these things happened," but it wasn't. Moses wrote about it before these things happened, and as a result, then God's favour will be suspended. And so, when you cross over the Jordan, settled in the land, you've had your children, and your children have had children. Moses is painting this picture of what is about to happen. You will go after other gods and do the evil. And what is the evil? It's not you will do evil. It is you will do the evil. And what is the evil? But to follow after gods that are not him. They will break that down. They abandon the true God. And they go after all these other gods, which we saw up on the screen behind me. All of those gods were from that time. And they violate, apart from the wisdom one, of course, they will violate the main command in this covenantal relationship. And the result is catastrophic. Israel will be destroyed. But it will be the Lord who will do the destructive work. It's God who will bring the Assyrians and the Babylonians. And dare I may even say Hitler in the process of all of this. Because this is the same thing. The Lord will destroy Israel and the Lord will scatter their population. You want to serve other gods? Fine. Out of the land. Get out. You're not allowed here anymore. Not until you decide that maybe I will be your God. And Psalm 115 talks about this. It's worth reading the whole psalm. I'll just read a few verses from it. But why should the Gentiles say, "So where is your God?" They've abandoned him. That's what's happened. But our God is in heaven. He does whatever he pleases. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths that do not speak, eyes they have that do not see, ears that do not hear, noses they have that do not smell, they have hands that do not handle, feet they have that do not walk, nor do they mutter through their throat. Those who make them are like them. So is everyone who trusts in them. O Israel, trust in the Lord. He is the help and shield. So, and you who fear the Lord, trust in the Lord. So, we find in now here is where we get to the gospel. The last 3 verses, 29 to 31. This is the gospel according to Moses. Because Moses reminds his audience that this is an eternal covenant. Eternal covenant. The judgment cannot be the last word. And yet in his mind it seems inevitable that Israel will go apostate. They will abandon the Lord, and the Lord will punish them for it, but it's not going to be the end of the story. So hear the gospel according to Moses, but from where? From there. From where is he going to call them? He's going to call them from the lands in which they are serving idols to their heart's content. But from there you will seek the Lord your God. And you will find him if you search him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in tribulation and all these things have come upon you in the latter days. What is the latter days? What, are we not in the latter days? The latter days wasn't back then 600 years before Christ. This is the latter days. So, they did return back to the land and then they were ejected again. And in AD 70 that put an end to it. Actually in AD 137 it completely ended, but AD 70 was really the crunch when the Romans invaded Jerusalem and destroyed it and destroyed the temple. And until 1948 Israel did not exist, because the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not leave you or destroy you or forget the covenant with your fathers, that he swore to them. So by the time we get to the end of the book of Deuteronomy, we've learned about the covenant blessings and the covenant curses, because they are fundamental to the covenant. They're written into the covenant document. That means in the future, if Israel persists in idolatry, the Lord will send them again off into exile. But it will not destroy this covenant because it is an eternal one. And the reason why God is doing this, because it is part of the covenant. God is still acting out the covenant. He's saying, you want to follow other gods, fine. But restoration is also part of God's future for Israel. It is important to hear this today because the covenant with Israel still exists. It's not been reneged on. Because if God reneges on the covenant that he has with Israel, what's it to say that he will not renege on his covenant with us? Are his promises true or are they not? He's made promises to Israel, and that means that he will keep his promises with us. The character of God guarantees Israel's future. He will not drop you or destroy you totally. He won't relax his hand. He won't let you go. That's what he means here. And God has bound himself to Israel in eternal, irrevocable covenant. And that's the gospel, according to Moses. All right. So we managed to get through the covenant, present and future today. Are there any questions on any of these things?
In the beginning, you said that God is not, is a spirit. And yet, when it says in the Bible that we were created in his image, God created man in his own image. So, I don't quite follow that.
Yeah, I think that. Oh my goodness, what do you say about that? This was not what I was prepared for. We're in his likeness because we are made to be like him, but not physically. We have a spirit, and we are made in his image. Because because you have to remember that disabled people, they're made in the image of God. Mentally disabled people are made in the image of God. So it's got nothing to do with physicality. It has to do with the essence of a person.
In faith and we haven't seen God, we haven't seen God until we pass over. So it's all faith.